Welcome to Games from Folktales, a podcast that mixes historical research and tabletop role-playing settings. I'm your host, Timothy Ferguson. This week we return to Mythic Cheshire. The following pieces come from Traditions and Customs of Cheshire by Christina Hole. Christina Hole is famous in folklore circles. If you listen to the Lawmen podcast, she's the author they keep referring to as Christ in a Hole. I'm finding that her book has a lot of digressions where she says, and in Cornwall and in Devon they do the same thing and it means this. So I've got less out of her than I had hoped. When I was reading Ballads and Legends of Cheshire, which was written in 1867 by Lee Egerton, he complains that Cheshire doesn't have any folklore because it doesn't have any mountains. And I initially thought that this was foolish because I've done a Cornwall book and Cornwall doesn't have any mountains and it's got a lot of folklore, but looking back over my notes, it does seem that Cheshire's folklore, at least as far as I've uncovered it, is heavily weighted toward Longdendale, and Longdendale is a mountain pass in the upper right-hand corner of Cheshire, or traditional Cheshire. Modern Cheshire doesn't include it, it's in the Peak District. So maybe he had a point. What this means is that the end product of the Cheshire research may not be a gazetteer-style book the way Cornwall was. It may instead have a site or two sites that are of particular interest to a covenant and a series of stories surrounding those. So structurally more of a saga book. Some of the pieces that I'm including here are quite short. This is because they can still be suitable for gaming as backgrounds for virtues, flaws, boons, and hooks. So if I say in Cheshire people think that pigs can see the wind, what I'm really saying is that if you have an Aurum Magus, a pig is a suitable familiar. Let's start with a viz source, or perhaps a plot hook. Alabaster is used as a panacea for sickness in sheep. Now, the easiest way to get alabaster, when you're in Chester, is to steal it from the tombs of rich people, where it's used as a cheaper alternative to marble. It seems an odd choice to steal tomb decorations, powder them up, and then shove them into your sheep, because this might annoy ghosts. It could also taint the wool, milk, and meat of the sheep. Bit of background. Servants in Cheshire are hired at annual fairs. By tradition, a servant who changes employers does so at the end of the year, departing their old job on December the 26th and beginning the new one on the 2nd of January. Covenants who are seeking coven folk will be drawn into this system. Church bells are always rung at 8 p.m, regardless of whatever other times they're being rung, and between Michaelmas and Lady Days, the bell also rings out the date. The pancake bell begins the feast of Shrove Tuesday, and this includes games such as football, foot races, having a ball of silk thrown into a crowd of people to scrimmage for it, and an archery competition with a silver arrow as a prize. Sorry, this is in Chester itself. They also play Tip-Cat and Prison Bars, which are cricketish wide games. Minor magic item and a curse. When the wheat is almost harvested in each farmstead, the final little piece is twisted into a sheaf and tied with a ribbon, and people pitch sickles at it to cut the neck. The person who hits it gets a small prize from the landowner and gets to keep it as a luck charm for the next year. After the neck is cut, the farmhands go to a high point and make a loud declaration like, "Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, this is to give notice that Mr. X has given the seck a turn and sent the told hare into Mr. Y's corn. Wow, wow, wow." Note that corn in this sense is the main grain crop in the area, not maize. The last person to cut their crop, therefore, has the old hare for the year, which is seen as unlucky or shameful. The Marler rituals. Marl is a mixture of clay and lime that's used as a fertilizer and is dug out of pits. The Marlers only dig marl for the part of the year when spreading it's useful, so they have an annual celebration to close the marl pits. They bullbait in the pit itself, and they beg money from nearby wealthy people, and they sing the praises of their benefactors. The traditional cry is led by their festival captain, who is called the Lord of the Soil. It goes like this: "Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, this is to give notice that Mr. X has given us Marler's part of £100, and whomever will do the same We will give thanks and praise. And then his retinue all yell, largesse, largesse, largesse. Note that if they are given sixpence or more, they instead say part of £1,000. Note that that's a story, so a fairy might steal that £1,000 even though it doesn't really exist. Sacrificing bulls in pits seems ritualistic, but I haven't found any strong reference as to what they're sacrificing to. A note on a floor: if you look into an owl's nest, it's said to cause lifelong melancholia. Familiars in Viz sources. Erkington Hall, there is a walled garden filled with blackbirds. The ancestor of these birds was a blackbird into which a group of priests had forced a ghost. This makes some of them oddly tied to the art of mentum and to necromancy. Exorcising ghosts into animals, even dead animals, is common in Cheshire. These exorcisms are usually performed in teams, and they make the ghost smaller and smaller until it can be shoved into an animal, or in one case, a bottle. And now creature. The Gabriel ratchets are flying hounds that haunt the night. Gabriel in this case is a dialectic word for corpse. It's not a reference to the Archangel Gabriel, although I've seen that link made in some other areas. They are led or followed by a flying hunter, who is variously stated to be the devil, a local squire of great wickedness, or Odin, according to Christina, but I'm not sure where she got that one from. You'll be unmolested if you lie face down in the road until they are gone. Plot hook. Chowlering is the local name for the autumn custom of boys roaming the fields with stones to throw at birds, scaring them off newly planted seeds. Imagine they hit something odd. Dragonflies dislike snakes and hover over them to warn people. Cats can see the coming weather. The Eger River takes 3 lives per year. Hole says it's named after the Aegir, the Norse gods, but that seems to be a stretch. The Dee River, in contrast, is holy, and it creates lights to aid in the recovery of corpses. These are the corpse candles that are seen elsewhere in Ars Magica. If you find a drowned corpse, you will be haunted by it if you do not bury the person in the proper fashion. This is an oddity. Elsewhere, stealing the corpse from the sea might be considered unlucky. This is odd given that there are wreckers operating on the Wirral, the coastline. Why they aren't haunted isn't clear. Perhaps they bury the corpses after stealing their stuff. Source of favours. The Lady of Reedsmere was accused of being unfaithful, and her husband said he wouldn't believe in her innocence unless the island floated around the lake. Fortunately for her, the island he was referring to was a massive peat, and a storm broke it off from the floor of the lake, so that it did float about, randomly, for the next 2 decades. The poor weather and the severing of the peat island's link to the lake bed are relatively simple with hermetic magic, and she'd owe you a favour afterwards. There are so many saints' wells in Cheshire, you may as well just make them up. The water used for Cheshire's monastery is a saint's well. Many are also wishing wells. Oddly, they don't need coins, most accept pins, rags, or stones, which are thrown in special ways. So, over your left shoulder while not looking, bouncing off something or other. Well dressing is a common practice. It's generally annual. This feels a little fairy-ish. Nantwich's brine wells, which are used in salt making, are blessed annually, and they are freezing cold. The pits in which the wells are found are so cold that many women can't stay in them for more than half an hour at a time. These women, who are called witch wailers, are known for their swearing and perhaps for their cursing in the mystical sense. In Neston on Easter Monday, there's a festival called the Riding of the Lord. A man rides along the main street on a donkey, and he's jeered and pelted with rotten food, and he is paid for this, but no one seems to know what the point of it is, beyond that it's customary. Is he a scapegoat? If your character has the tormenting supernatural entity flaw, could it be because you were the scapegoat in some previous year, and you've moved to the Covenant because the Aegeus shields you from the effects of the flaw? There is a May Queen or a Queen of the Roses in many areas. She doesn't seem to have any particular supernatural powers. In Cheshire, the spirits of the dead were expected to be more present on the 2 days of All Souls and All Saints. Children go souling, which is going from house to house singing a traditional song and being given small spiced cakes or coins in exchange. In Ars Magica terms, this is a feast of the dead, but it's gathered by children or things pretending to be children. They are also followed by the Hodning horse, which is a huge, simple puppet with a horse's skull, so it's like the Merry Lude. Mummers also play on these days, and their performances are called soul-caking plays. Apple bobbing, apples on a string, and bonfires all occur. In Cheshire, mistletoe is called all heal and thought broadly curative. People don't kiss under it. Instead, they use kissing bushes. These are iron rings threaded with evergreens and ribbons and with apples and candles hanging underneath. If they are not taken down, they become goblins on Candlemas Day. Oddly, this tradition that any greenery not taken down by Candlemas becomes a goblin turns up a lot in the poetry of Robert Herrick, who I will be doing an episode on next week. People stage fake funerals on the Wirral, which I'd remind you is the seacoast, and their reason for doing this is that there is a tax on salt, and this means that they can carry coffins filled with salt along the distribution road. In Tabley Old Hall, some people were having a dinner, and one man thought another man was being a bit too familiar with his wife, and they fought, and the husband was killed before the eyes of his wife, and then she committed suicide on the spot. Good grief. The host, who must have had ice in his veins, swore everyone there to secrecy and walled the corpses up in a windowless room, and the ghosts of the couple are often still seen. There is a ghostly procession that brings home a dead crusader, and it is followed by a weeping woman, who might either be his wife or his mistress, and why this procession is seen repeatedly is absolutely unclear. There is a haunted sandhole in Knutsford. A tax collector was murdered by an inn's landlord and the body hidden in the sandhole. And then whenever the innkeeper went past the sandhole, he would see the ghost coming out to get him. Presumably he had second sight. Around Knutsford, speaking of sand, on special occasions they use pale sand to draw diagrams in the streets. These are beautiful patterns which are used for festivals, and they may have Rigovis in them. The bridge at Farringdon has 2 child ghosts which haunt it. They were thrown over the side by their uncle to claim their property. In Beeston, all the ghosts in the area, once per year, get together for a vast procession to the churchyard. They fill the streets, and they see it as a festive event, but the humans avoid them as far as possible. In later stories, that is, Elizabethan and afterwards, they all come in their carriages, so they actually block the streets with their ghostly carriages. On the Wirral one day, there was a huge spinning pillar of smoke 20 yards across and as high as a church steeple that made a terrible noise. I am assuming that that was what we call a fury, which is a class of demons from realms of power, the infernal. St. Wenberg, she of the frightfully violent geese, caused a magical sleep to fall across a town because some people came to get her relics to take them to Chester, and the locals resisted in force. There's a monk who sells his soul to the devil for 3 wishes, and he wishes for as much venison as he can eat for the rest of his life, which he gets, and as much wine as he can drink for the rest of his life, which he gets, and then for 10 bales of hay from a particular place, and the place is a beach, so the devil can't deliver, and therefore he can't collect the man's soul. The tenants of the monastery go to that beach each year to plough the beach in commemoration. And that is the folklore from Christina Hall, which we will be able to salvage for Ars Magica. I am on the lookout for an illustrator to do me a map of Beeston Castle, which is a fantastic little site for a convent. Having had a look at it, I've now discovered that the outcrop that it's standing on has caves underneath it as well, so I'm looking for a map of those. My hope is that this November, when we do the write a piece per day challenge that we as a community have often done as a sort of rebel NaNoWriMo, even though that organisation no longer exists, I'll be doing one of the creatures that has been discussed on the podcast. Together with the 18 I've already done and a few more that I'll do before kickoff, I hope this means that by December I will be able to put out another volume of Ars Magica Monsters, although this time it will be 50 rather than 100, because the free software I use for layout, which is Canva, is not really designed for books. If there's one in particular you want me to start up, comment on the blog that accompanies the podcast, or find me on the Ars Magica forum. Your saga may vary.